Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond, season by season, one at a time. Now, by the number you can tell, we are almost in the home stretch, and we're not quite there yet. We're just approaching it. But we are at the point where I say, from how I remember it, that the show creatively kind of has started to go down a little bit. There's still fun episodes in this season. And of course, this is where I actually started to watch some first run. Of course, this is season 8. As you can tell from how skinny this box set is, this is one I acquired later, when they stopped doing the big thick ones. And this was the second copy I decided to get. For some reason, the first one I got, one of the discs wasn't right. And I didn't notice until years later when it was too late to return it, when I was watching that disc for some reason. So I had to get a new one. And so it sticks out like a sore thumb in there. There are 23 episodes this season. Great. Some stuff is popping up. So it's about the average-ish length. It's the next season that's going to get very, very small by comparison. Now, before I delve into the episode proper, I think this is the time where I should go into some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that kind of ties into why this episode is the way it is. Now, just to get this out of the way, this is the only episode that does not have Brad Garrett in it in any shape or form, and because of that, it's also the last to not feature any of the regular cast members. The rest of them, of course, were the ones that Peter Boyle was not in. And I think there was one or two without Marie, without Doris Roberts. Now, despite the fact that Ray and Phil Rosenthal at different points were thinking 7 seasons would probably be the cutoff point, here we are with season 8. Now Ray, since he wore many hats on the show, including writer, and of course the star and titular character, he got himself quite a pay bump for this season. I don't have on hand what it was before, but it got bumped up to $40 million for the whole season, which when you break it down is about $1.7 million per episode. Which is not unprecedented, and it's not the last time something like that would happen. I mean, years later, Charlie Sheen got quite a comparable pay bump for the last couple seasons that he was on 2.5 Men before his off-the-set stupidity got him fired. Everybody knows about that. Now, in addition to that, he also would get a pretty good chunk of change through syndication, which, as you've probably all seen from my comments throughout the last couple of years as I've reviewed the first 7 seasons, had already started by this point. I mean, the summer before this season is how I caught up with most of the big plot points of the first 7 seasons. Or first 6, actually, because 7 they didn't really do that much. But they did do it. Now, by comparison, Brad Garrett, and I'm assuming the rest of the cast, made around $150,000 to $160,000, which is still a pretty good chunk of change, but that's like beginning of show money, not where a very popular show we're this far into it money. Now, I don't know what Ray was making before. Maybe it was more comparable and they just didn't raise the money of it. But it's one of those things where, like, yeah, it's not really that fair. I mean, I can understand Ray still getting a little bit sizable more, especially when he's wearing multiple hats and the others are just acting. And if they do something else for an episode, then they can get a raise. Like with Star Trek, some of the actors directing episodes, so they get that type of payment plus an acting payment if they're also in the episode. But here, I can get him being above it, just wholesale, but it should still be a little bit fairer. And the main reason I say that is that even though he is the star and titular character, without the supporting cast, the show would be boring as hell. I mean, there's a lot of points where it seems like they kind of reset some of the drama just to give friction and thus comedy. But if it was just a show about Ray, this show would suck. I'm going to be honest there. I mean, you've seen me critique Ray as a person and a character multiple times, and you can see what in those episodes without the supporting cast for him to run off of, it would be boring. You'd have to do a completely different type of show if it was just him and then maybe Debra. Without the rest of the cast, it's like, yeah, it'd be boring. It's one of the reasons why, as an aside, I think it was a crime that Peter Boyle never won an Emmy for it, but considering who he was in competition with around the time, you can kind of see why. Now, Brad refused to show up for a production and tapings unless the producers agree to renegotiate. And of course, considering what's going on with the actors' strike continuing as I record this, it's very timely. Now, CBS, the producers, responded by writing him out of episode 1, which is why Brad is not in this episode as Robert, and of course Amy's also not in the episode 2, but at least I'll say with that, it's kind of petty. There's at least a story reason why they're not in here. They're on their honeymoon. Now, in order to bring the boot down a little bit more, and this is very petty, but considering the history of TV and film production, it is a standard threat for them to make. They threatened to write him out of the show permanently, which, just hearing that threat now, I'm like, really? I mean, you could have done it to where they moved and they got their happy ending. It's just Ray, Debra, and the parents. And maybe once you guys came back to the table, have Brad show up every now and then. But the show would have suffered for it, especially with some of the drama we get in this season and the next season by having them be married now and having that extra set of grandparents, well, they're not quite grandparents, but extra set of in-laws, excuse me, to come and visit every now and then to spice up the plot with the views clash. You wouldn't have that anymore. And I don't know if CBS did not know that or they didn't care when making that threat. It's a standard threat, but it's still a dick move nonetheless. And this is why whenever there's salary stuff like this that everyone's on the same page with, you should not be afraid, especially in a area where you already have the union, to come together. And this is what happened, because Heaton, Roberts, and Boyle all called out sick in solidarity the following week. And with all the supporting cast gone, CBS realized, oh crap, we can afford to lose one, but not the entire supporting cast. Crap! So they decided to relent and negotiate. This is why solidarity forever. Or to put it another way, as Robert Baratheon put it in season 1 of Game of Thrones, what is the bigger number, 5 or 1? And I don't know, a lot of you are going to say 5, but in this situation it's not, because in this situation it's like 5, 1. That is all of them in solidarity with each other, and that's the studio. So they negotiated. Now, I don't have the figure for what Brad's pay bump was, but at least it was sizable. So I'd say probably a higher 6 figures. And I don't think he's getting over $1 million per episode, but at least a higher 6 figure. Now, the fun thing about this, and makes me wonder why the hell CBS would even threaten Brad with a permanent write-up, is that Ray supported his actions and then the actions of his fellow co-workers. And of course, Brad also had no grudge with him personally, even if people try to spin some of this to make it seem it's more drama-based than it is. And this is what Ray had to say about it in an interview. When my salary came out in the papers, I knew stuff would happen. I do exactly the same thing. And that last comment is referring to the walkout and all that, which makes sense. I mean, it's fair is fair. It's just, I wish I had all the figures in front of me so I could see when this should have actually happened more, because this strikes me as something that should have happened earlier if the pay was that disparaging, but I'm guessing it probably didn't get super disparaging until this season, which, based on the comment I mentioned at the top of the video, you kind of see why. Well, all that drama, probably one of the more fun things to talk about with this episode, and that's the reason why we got no Robert and Amy in this episode, even though it makes sense since they're on their honeymoon. This is the first episode of Season 8. This is Fun with Debra. It's written by Mike Scully, who is going to pop up a couple times throughout the next couple seasons. He's one of the newer writers. He's also going to write Party Dress, Blabbermouths, and Angry Sex. And Angry Sex I don't think I've seen all the way through in a long time, but that one, what the title implies. But of them, I don't think I would put any of them amongst my favorite episodes of the series. Maybe season, depending on how the next couple seasons roll, but at least with this season, definitely not. And this is probably my least favorite of the season opener so far. Now, part of it could be that the drama affected what story directions they could go in, but it's also one that we've kind of seen stuff like this before. Now, it opens with Ray getting ready to play golf, and Deborah's like, hey, where do you think you're going? I'm going to play golf. No, you're not. You said you were going to watch the kids. And a little back and forth, and then Ray finally relents and takes the kids. Now, we all know what's going through that tiny little head of his when he's going to relent. We all know what he's going to do, and that is he takes the kids to the golf course with him. Now, first, Debra is upset with it, but then Ray turns her whole logic back on her. It's like, they had fun. because they were with their dad. To quote them, Yahoo! Which of course makes sense. In this situation, even though he ended up going to the golf course, which Debra seems to not have wanted, the kids went with him and they had a blast. And they apparently made some fun memories, which was the whole point of him having the kids for the day, or at least the twins, I should say. That was the whole point of that. So she's going to try to fault him for doing it his own strange Ray way. Now to go with it, Ray does cite Frank as his defense, mentioning them going to the lodge with him. Which of course, when Marie hears, she's like, "You took my boss to your lodge, oh my god!" But, Frank tries to deny it, but Ray's like, "Yeah, no, we went and we had fun." That was the whole point of it, having fun. Which is probably one of the few times that you could cite Frank as your defense and actually win. Now, as we find out in the next scene, there's another reason why this upsets Debra a little bit. And that is, he will take the boys to the golf course with him and have some kind of fun, even though it kind of costs him some strikes. But he won't take her. So after a little talk, Ray decides, alright, we'll go. So they go. And today, Debra starts out all bubbly and cheerful, as we normally see when she's doing something new. Apparently she doesn't know that birdies is golf slang. I don't really play golf that much, and I don't even know that birdie means slang, but that's probably thrown in there as a little joke. Now, as they're going, they're having a nice little golf date, but as time goes on, it starts to break down between the two of them. Ray correcting how she's holding the putter, then later when he's not holding it right, Debra tries to step in. And you could tell as it switched from scene to scene that eventually this is all going to implode, and that's what happens. And of course, Ray, being Ray, with how this argument is, mentions that he did not even want to golf with her, as that ruining what he likes. Of course, you can already tell this is going to make Debra feel very, very hurt. And it goes a little bit, but we all know they're going to make up. And you can tell from how I'm wording my comments why this is my least favorite opener, without me having to say it, but in case you're wondering. It's just, for how long the show's been going on, at this point 8 seasons, this is a concept that probably would have worked better earlier in the show. Like maybe not as an opener, or maybe like a mid-season episode. Like, I think season 4 at the latest, this could have worked better, but for season 8, it just feels a little bit more run-of-the-mill. And you can definitely tell that because of Brad walking out, that they had to change some things last minute. Whether they had a different concept as the opener, maybe they had some other plot things that they had to kind of rush through with this one. But as a whole, it is definitely weak because of everything. And it just feels a little bit too familiar, if that makes sense. It's just a concept that we've seen so many times done better, that here it just feels very weak and, well, fun in parts. It's not as engaging. And that is why I find it to be my least favorite opener so far. Next season could always cinch it, but I don't know, let me see what next season's opener is. This one I remember, I might be able to give the comment on here. Oh no. That's definitely going to be the weakest if I don't remember, because next season is The Home. That's the one where they kind of shake up the status quo for a week. So that one definitely is a better concept than this one because of the shock value alone. Yeah. And that's really all I have to say about this one. So, till next time, everybody.